How does someone go from being a priest for nearly 20 years to being a counselor for drug and alcohol therapy to owning their own successful consulting business and being married for nearly 30 years? Today's guest is going to share with you his insights into how he's done it all and continues to reinvent himself through the power of psychodrama. This is Kathleen Gage. Welcome to the Power Up for Profits show. And I want to welcome everybody. This is Kathleen Gage, and welcome to the Power Up for Profits show. Today, I am so excited with my featured expert. Before I introduce him, I have a few questions. And of course, at my age, you need glasses for those few questions. Have you ever wondered how you could better manage those moments when somebody that you're dealing with is difficult and emotional? They could be customers, colleagues, friends, or family. There's always someone in your life who's a challenge, and I think we all deal with that. Well, my guest today has spent a lot of his life researching, teaching, and practicing the skills that can help you to manage your own emotions and emotional people. He's taught these skills to thousands of grateful people in many countries, and he's here to share with me a little of his story as an author, trainer, and entrepreneur. Hello, John Faisandier.
I'm lucky.
From Wellington, New Zealand. It's great to have you here. And we're a day apart. It's like I'm in the afternoon where I'm at, you're in the morning where you're at, and you're a day ahead of me. Great to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here too, Kathleen.
Well, let's just jump right in and tell me how you got started working with people around emotions. What was your catalyst for that?
Well, I originally trained and worked as a Catholic priest. And so I was very interested in working with people. I had been a school teacher as part of that. And but I started training in psychodrama. And that's a method of working with people where they get to explore their life. And as I learned this, of course, I needed to do my own personal work and deal with my own emotional issues. Then I worked for 3 years. When I qualified as a psychodramatist, I'd left the priesthood by that stage. I worked in a drug and alcohol rehabilitation hospital here in New Zealand. And there I really began to understand the power of emotions and particularly what drove people to drug and drink. And so I learned a lot there, and then when I left, the government was stopping funding to some of these programs, which incidentally, since then the prison population has risen dramatically since they closed a lot of these treatment centres. Then I set out wanting to teach these ideas to people in corporate world, not necessarily people who were addicted, but I could see understanding emotions would just improve everybody's life.
Well, okay, you mentioned you were a priest. How long were you a priest for?
Well, I was 19 years altogether. This is 8 years training, and I was working for 11 years in different ministries. I finished up in university as a university chaplain. And so that was a big part of my life, although it's now 30 years ago since I left.
Well, and it's interesting because, going from being in the priesthood, one thinks that when somebody makes that commitment, it's a lifetime and lifelong commitment, which you're evidence that that's not necessarily true. And I would imagine that with some people, why they have issues with their emotions is because they're not being true to themselves. Is that your experience when you work with people?
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, you ask about making a lifetime commitment, and when I made that commitment, absolutely it was. What I didn't realize is that life changes, and in a sense that I changed. What I did when I made that commitment, I was absolutely, true to myself as I understood myself then. Mm-hmm. As I developed and came to understand what some of the motivations were for keeping me in that life, particularly separate from intimate relationships.
Ah.
Actually, I was feeling that I was getting more and more shut down. I didn't really reach people, but I knew I began to learn that this was actually part of being human. And so that was a gradual journey. I think for many, also when they get married, people say this is for life. And, as they develop, sometimes they just work out either they can't sustain that in that current relationship. So it's not dissimilar to that, really.
I like that parallel because, a lot of people not that people are judgmental at all, but occasionally you run into one or two people who might have a judgment around the fact, oh, you made this commitment, why didn't you stick with it? And what a great comparison to people getting married, and they grow and change and find that no longer serves them. Now, your company name and your program is called Thriving Under Fire. How did you come up with that name, and what was the catalyst there for you to start teaching people through psychodrama? You mentioned about that, and I'd love to learn more about psychodrama and then the Thriving Under Fire.
Yeah, well, as it turned out, one of the patients from the hospital, his wife had come down for family week, and I was working with them as a couple. She was an HR manager in one of our major banks here in New Zealand. When I left that, she wanted to keep contact because she did some more work with me. Then she, one day, this is a really good marketing thing actually, because she was very positive towards me and incredibly positive. And but I realized I need to keep making contact with people, with prospects. And I remember turning up to her office one day just for a cup of tea or just to say hello. And then she said, oh, last week we had one of our branches was having difficulty with customers swearing and getting upset at the tellers. And I just realized you would be the perfect person to go and do some training for them. But she said, I didn't think of you last week, was the key word. And here I was turning up the following week, and it's like, oh, now I'm thinking of you. So from a marketing point of view, this is like, just really said, you've got to keep putting yourself in front of people. Anyhow, long story short, I did. They could only train in the evening because the bank, they had to operate during the day. So I did. I said maybe we need to do 2 evenings. So I went back the following week, and I realized that's when I developed this program. And I wanted to get a really catchy name for it. And one day in the shower, where I do most of the best of my thinking, I came up with this, and I was looking for this acronym, and TUF and Thriving Under Fire really just brought those two together.
Interesting. Well, I do want to talk about how you market yourself, but before we do that, tell us what psychodrama is and how that plays into you working with the clients you work with, whether it be a corporate client, a coaching client. Give us more insight into that, John.
Well, psychodrama, it was developed way back in the 1920s or 1910s even in Vienna, and then Jacob Marino came to America. He was tossing up whether to go to Russia or America. He made a good choice there. And it's a way, really, instead of just talking about things, people get to dramatize them, set them out into an action space or a stage. And when they do that, they can see all the different elements. So it's a way of looking at your life in a new way that develops spontaneity and creativity. So when you see yourself in this way, something emerges. You have a whole different relationship with yourself. So you can set out the inner functioning of yourself, which is done more therapeutically. But you can also do this in communities. We call that more like sociodrama, or you can do it around relationships. So that's sociometry. But it's all comes under the umbrella of psychodrama, and that's psyche is the mind, drama is to act out.
Okay. And is this a type of therapy? Is it actually under the umbrella of therapy?
Well, it's used therapeutically. So when I was working at the hospital, that was therapy. Um, when I use it mostly in my workshops now, it's much more educational. So, but in a sense, to me, all education, all of our life, all of our interactions are therapeutic. That means they should be healing, because if they're not healing, they're damaging. So you can take. So I would say every positive relationship that we have is therapeutic. Can lead to expansion, growth, healing, in that sense. But so yes, psychodrama is used therapeutically. It's also used for community building. So you get communities together. In my workshops, because they are shorter, I often use small figures, and we do like a petite psychodrama, a little psychodrama, using figures to illustrate what people are talking, what their experience is. And it's
I'm really curious. Okay, you've had a very diverse background, from the priesthood to being a counselor with drug and alcohol abuse, to going into the corporate environment, being a coach. Along the way, I'm sure you've had situations that have been tough. What would you say has been one of the toughest periods in your life, and how did you get through it?
Probably the toughest period would have been when I did leave the priesthood. That was a process. I had been a university chaplain. I was in the middle of doing a master's degree in adult education. I was doing training in psychodrama, which I was really just getting into. And at that point, the bishop of the diocese where I was on contract to, because I belonged to an order, he didn't want me there. He was an ultra conservative, and I used to do all sorts of things, play guitar and sing in restaurants and do all. Anyway, I won't do that bit. But that process of leaving for me was very, very difficult. Partly there was a lot of shame involved because being a priest is such a public figure, and so I at that stage actually had joined a theatre company called Playback Theatre. So belonging to that community, being able to tell my story every week as we did rehearsals, training in psychodrama where I could work through some of those issues, and I had supervision. So it was a very intense time. Counseling, talking to people is hugely important. At that stage, I was reading a lot books like Louise Hay, where affirmations actually supported me. So in the middle of the night when I'd wake up feeling terrible about myself, one of the affirmations that I use and still use today is I love and approve of myself. And because I just felt the judgment of others, some of which was real.
Right. I imagine it would be. And, and I love your transparency. And what I find very interesting about your whole journey is that you've now been married for how many years? 30 years?
Well, we've been together. We met shortly after I left, so just nearly 30 years now that we've been together. Yes.
That's amazing. And so you bring so much, again, diversity to any experience in working with people around relationships, where you know what it's like to commit to a life of celibacy, and then you know what it's like to commit to a life of marriage. And, so there's a flavor that you bring to it that other people can't, which, kind of leads into the next question about diverse activity and bringing different experiences to the party, if you will. You mentioned marketing earlier. What do you do to find your clients and to secure business? Well,
gosh, it feels like I've done everything over the years. I've been in business for 20 years.
Okay.
Just over 20 years now. I initially I did a lot of conference speaking. It seemed to be easier to get into conferences then, 20 years ago. Now it seems like they only, the speakers at conferences are also the major sponsors. And so I get a little bit, certainly in New Zealand, well, not entirely, but my current work now, so what else have I, the biggest thing at the moment is writing a blog. So I do a very short blog every week, just 200 to 300 words usually. And that I've been doing that for a few years. Prior to that, I was doing a bigger newsletter, all of which were very significant. They're not just sales pitches.
Right.
They really are gifts to people. I want the whole world to learn what I'm teaching, so that's what I give. And in recent times, I've wanted to really extend my market. Well, the other important part of marketing here in New Zealand, for sure, is actually doing a good job. And yesterday I had a call from one of the government departments, and they run our National Library, and they're saying we're having difficulty there with the public coming in getting upset. We've heard from several places that you are a very good provider, a training provider.
Wow.
Now, that, to me, and that's built up really over the 20 years. This message now I want to get out to a wider audience. I've developed an online program that can be done from any part of the world. I've got a book that I've published that's on Amazon. So I'm really wanting, my major marketing thrust at the moment is through podcast guest appearances.
Excellent.
And I've been learning that from you in particular, and wow, what a learning journey that's been over the
How's your backside? I tend to kick people in the backside a little.
Well, I signed up for this, and you were kind of saying you really want people who are committed. And I thought about it, and I said, well, I'm ready for this. And I've been getting up for the first series, getting up at 4 a.m. ready for our 5 a.m. my time sessions. And I'm really, so what I'm finding, I'm putting in the work, I'm getting the results.
And I really would love to talk about that. But before we do, let people know how they can find you. Where can they find you? A website or a blog?
Yep, my website's very simple. www.tuf, that's TUF, Thriving Under Fire, www.tuf.co.nz. NZ.
Okay, and we'll put that down below in the description. But the whole issue.
Welcome to sign up for that weekly newsletter. It's just
excellent. We'll make sure that people know where to get that, and we'll encourage people to sign up, because what I love is that you're all about value first. It's like really helping to educate people. And you have proven that you're willing to go the extra mile, because for the first go around in the training that you went through, you were the only person that was outside of the US. We had one person in Canada, I believe, but you were showing up at 5 a.m. And a lot of people would say, 5 a.m., that's too early. Talk to us about commitment in relationships and the whole commitment to having better communication. How does that play into the whole experience?
Well, I think, anything of value you've got to work for. And I've certainly, well, even in my time as a priest, we did a lot of professional development in that setting. With psychodrama, there's huge amount of continuous development as a psychodramatist, and that took me 10 years to qualify for that, and another 10 years to become a trainer in it, so I could train other psychodramatists. And the same with my marriage, and we have done a number of weekend relationship enrichment courses. Over the time, we realized that we can't just bumble along and work it out all on our own. And I find that a lot with running the business as well. So I'm committed to being a lifetime learner. This actually gives me a huge amount of life. You can see I've covered over some of my books at the back, but I'm really committed to learning, and I learn a lot from the internet, but more even from books. And so that really, if you want to do anything in life and learn about relationships particularly, you do need to do the learning. And that's why I wanted to, I realize it's important to teach people about it. I've developed a really good process for teaching people, particularly how to deal with those moments that are difficult, where emotion arises, not only in the other person, but in yourself. And I think that's one of the, yeah.
As I look at all that you've been through in your life and all that you've given to others, when all is said and done, you're at the end of your life, you're looking back, how do you want to be remembered?
There's always been one thing. I decided this early in my life, that in the eve, and it's a quote from a great Christian mystic, John of the Cross, who wrote in the 15th century, "In the evening of our life, we will be judged on love." And that phrase has just stuck with me. So for me, everything I do is motivated by love. And I love people I haven't met, people I meet just one moment. I know how significant one small meeting can be if it's filled with love. And so my whole business, I mean, I don't write this as my corporate statement, because it's, corporates don't totally understand it, but this is what motivates me. I want to be known as a lover. And anybody who meets me can experience that.
Absolutely. And I know that from personal experience in knowing you and what you've contributed to the group that we've been working with. And in closing, John, what are your final thoughts for people?
Well, the final thoughts really are that no matter whatever anybody is expressing, how emotional, upset, whether they're swearing, whatever they're saying, they're expressing something of their distress. And being able to take that, hear it for what it really is their distress, rather than an attack on you, will help you to make a more loving and healing response to them. And as all that's needed is to acknowledge their distress. This is really upsetting for you. This has cost you a lot. You're worried about this. Any of these very simple things that people you can do. So rather than thinking of the other person as the enemy, really, if we responded and just say, "Wow, this is pretty hard for you at the moment," something like that. That would be my
nice. And again, where can people find you?
www.tuf.co.nz.
Excellent.
tuf.co.nz, and you can see sign up there for my weekly little blog. Love to hear from you.
Excellent. And I know that you work with corporations, you work with individuals, you work with associations. So all of that information is available on your website. John, this has been delightful. Thank you so much from across the world. I am so grateful that we have connected and you're in my life. So you have a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you very much, Kathleen, and you too.
Thank you.